Not at all, he said, and grinned at me. There's a printed circuit under the saddle. The beam powers it. Printed circuit, I said. Antigravity, he said. Welcome to Stories of Futures Past, written when 50 years ago was in the future. Today, I present to you Replace the Horse by Laurence M. Janifer, published 1959. A humorous, mad scientist invents a gadget that can do wondrous things for the world, but he uses it to cheat at horse racing and make money for himself. Style story today. Betting on the races to get rich, or rather, cheating at the races using gadgets or inventions, is a trope or feature I have come across in several stories of the era. I assume horse racing might have been a somewhat more common activity back then than it is today? Or is this maybe an American thing and it's still popular? All I know is that there is not that much of this sort of thing here where I live these days. I still find stories featuring such things both interesting and funny, like this one. I mean, whatever can go wrong? Enjoy. Replace the Horse by Laurence M. Janifer, writing as Larry M. Harris, which was his actual name at the time. Originally published in Fantastic, January 1959. Narrated by Tom Trisser. The only trouble with Willie Dunstan was that he was a scientist. Of course, things wouldn't have been so bad if he'd only been a fair to middling scientist, or even a downright poor one. But no, Willie had to be a good scientist. That was what ruined him, and ruined me too. My name's Arthur Holly, and by profession I'm a trainer. It's my job to see that the horses are always in shape, always ready to go at whatever track happens to be open. And I'm pretty good, too. If I hadn't been good, I'd never have had the idea of going into business for myself, and none of this would have happened. But you see, I got the chance to buy this plug. A plug is a decrepit horse, of no use to anybody, and damn little use to himself. Naturally, the animal wasn't described to me as a plug. Greg called him a business opportunity. "This is your chance to start your own stable," he said. "This horse is a winner, going at a sacrifice price. Confidentially, the owner doesn't realize what he's got, and he just wants to get rid of the animal at a good price." Naturally, that made me suspicious right from the start, and when I saw the horse I was more than suspicious. I was sick. Greg had done his best to spruce the poor thing up, but you can't disguise a sway-backed, empty-bellied, cross-eyed old plug enough, so I can't tell what it is. "I'll tell you the horse is a terrific buy," Greg whispered to me behind his hand. The animal was up for auction, of course. Not that there were many buyers. I was there with Greg. A couple of small owners were there trying to look smart and calculating, and a tall, thin guy with glasses and no hair was there too. "He's a terrific buy for a glue factory," I said, and sat on my hands. I watched the horse go, at last, for $135, and I thought no more about it. I'd wasted an afternoon, but it was my own fault. I should have listened to that little voice inside that starts to talk to me whenever Greg comes around. I did notice that the buyer was the tall, thin guy with the glasses and no hair. But what was that to me? Nothing. Until Greg came along a couple of days later. "I know a guy who's looking for a trainer," he told me. I was clocking Blue Joy at the time, and I didn't answer him until she'd crossed the finish line. A beautiful mare, 3 years old, with the wind and staying power of a colt. A winner, if I ever saw one. I pushed the stopwatch shut and turned around. "I'm working for a guy who needs a trainer," I said. "This guy I know," Greg said. "He wants to make his trainer half owner of the stables. Would I come to you if it wasn't a good deal?" Well, of course he would. I reminded him of the plug I'd gone down to buy. "Now, that's a funny coincidence," Greg said, and I laid back my ears and got ready to run. Greg's funny coincidences are the only things in the world that mean more trouble than his business opportunities. But Greg didn't notice. He went right on. "Remember the guy who bought that plug?" The tall, thin guy with a G and the no H. Sure, I remembered him. "Well, he's the guy who wants a trainer owner," Greg said. Oh, fine. I didn't want to work with a plug I'd seen, and any guy who'd buy that one probably had a stable full of equally sad animals. "He's a scientist," Greg said. "He's got some new ideas." And that didn't make me feel any happier, let me tell you. I know enough of those college-trained characters. We have had them as stable boys and walkers, and every notion in their heads is just more sawdust and nonsense. Never saw a college boy yet who made a good horse handler. Never expect to see one. And a scientist with lots of new ideas didn't sound good. "At least come down and see him," Greg said. "What can you lose?" "An afternoon," I said. But I came. Why? God only knows. I know this much. I wish I hadn't. The guy who'd bought the plug was a scientist, all right. For a track and stables, he'd bought an old sinkhole of a place the former owner had been trying to get rid of for 10 years. The ground was rocky and got kind of swampy during wet weather. He had 5 animals, all of them horrible plugs like the one I'd seen him buy. He led that one out to the track, saddled up, climbed on, and handed me down a pair of binoculars. "Follow the horse with these," he said. "I'm standing trackside," I said. "What do I need with binocs?" "Don't argue," he said. "Follow the horse with these. Tie me if you want to, but keep the glasses trained on the horse." And he started off. I figured I might as well humor the guy, and I watched him through the binocs as he went around. He was a hell of a jockey. He sat straight as a poker in the saddle, with a kind of frightened expression on his face, and he kept one hand on the reins and one on his glasses so they wouldn't fall off. It was something to see. Only it wasn't funny. That plug, carrying a jockey who weighed maybe 165 pounds, a full saddle, and weight distributed all wrong because the guy was sitting so stiff, went around the crazy stony track like a piece of the wind. By my clock, he beat Blue Joy's time. I didn't believe it, but it had happened. When the tall, thin guy climbed off the horse, he was beaming, and he looked a little relieved. He was also winded, and it took him a second to catch his breath. Then he said, "Want to join me? How about it?" I said, "What kind of dope are you using, mister?" "No dope," he told me. Greg was standing nearby. "I told you this was something big," he said. "It's big, all right," I told him, "and it's pretty illegal, too. Thanks, but I don't want to spend the next 10 years in jail. I have a job and a trade. I want to keep them." "There's nothing illegal about it," the tall, thin guy said. "By the way, my name is Dunstan. Call me Willie." "I'm Arthur Holly," I said, "and I'm leaving. Call me a taxi." "Don't be that way," Greg put in. "Listen to the man." "The secret is in the binoculars," Bunston said. "They're really a setup for beamed power transmission. It's built into the barrels of the binoculars." I blinked. "You mean you put electricity into the horse?" I said. "Not at all," he said, and grinned at me. "There's a printed circuit under the saddle. The beam powers it." "Printed circuit?" I said. "Antigravity," he said. Brother. But there wasn't any doubt about it. Willie Dunstan, glasses and all, really had something. He'd invented anti-gravity, but he didn't see why he should give it to the government or something and not make any money out of it. With the patent laws the way they are, anyhow, this is the way he explained it to me, he probably couldn't even get a patent on the thing, since it was only a new application of existing art, or something. So he had to figure out some way of making money out of anti-gravity without letting anybody know what he had. Horse racing was the answer, of course. Put the circuit under the saddle, using printed stuff so it doesn't bulk and cause embarrassing questions. Power it from a pair of binocs in the stands, and the saddle doesn't weigh a thing. Neither does the jockey. The horse is running free, unweighted. No wonder the plug made time. And no wonder Greg was excited. This was a way to win races. "I wanted a trainer to avoid suspicion," Dunstan told me. "I've got to make this look good. I can talk about new scientific methods of training to explain why my horses win." "Sure," I said. I felt kind of blank. "But I needed a man I could trust," he said. "Greg here told me you were that man." "What does Greg get out of it?" "A commission from me," he said, "for providing me with a trainer." I couldn't understand why Greg would be content to take a commission and get out. Not then, I couldn't. I'd figured I had a pretty good deal, no work to speak of, and a half ownership in the surest stables this side of Mexico City. Greg grinned at me and, God call me down for a stupid idiot, I grinned right back. It was a little later, when we were alone, that I managed to convince Dunstan to hire a jockey. He was all for riding the plug himself, but, as I pointed out, he did not look like a jockey, he had no license, and there wasn't a chance in hell of his getting one. He agreed, and I called in an old friend of mine named Teddy Wills to take the job. He got one look at the plug and swore up and down that he would never be seen in public on the thing. But I fast-talked Teddy too, and after all, we were old friends. He trusted me. We spent a week just getting things ready, readjusting the machine to Teddy's weight, and then we entered the plug, which we'd named First Hope, after a lot of discussion, in a California race. The odds were 13 to 1 going in, and they rose right up to 30 to 1 as soon as the public got a look at poor sway-backed First Hope. They were on their way out of sight when the board closed. I sat in the stands with Dunstan. He had money down on the race, of course, though I didn't. As half owner, the profits on the stables were half mine, and betting on the horse you train is bad luck. Dunstan held the binocs. His hands shook a little, and once, before the race, he turned to me and said, "I hope nothing goes wrong," which frightened me a little bit stiff, since I wasn't figuring anything could go wrong. The starting bell went, and First Hope was away, leading the pack. Even knowing what I knew, it was hard to believe my eyes. That horrible old plug made it in 3 lengths ahead of a colt with a fine reputation, and 4.5 lengths ahead of the favourite, who ended in show position. Naturally, there was an investigation, but there was no real trouble. Dunstan and his scientific methods of training, my honest face, and the fact that there were no visible gimmicks either on the horse or in his bloodstream or saliva, convinced the track judges. The win stayed on the books, and we headed out of California for a Nevada track opening. The reputation of good old First Hope had preceded us, of course. I wanted Dunstan to use another nag, but he told me that building the printed circuit saddles was expensive in both time and money. He wanted to barrel up a pretty large stake first, and he was keeping the other horses, meanwhile, in reserve. So First Hope ran again at slightly lower odds. They weren't as much lower as you'd think, though. People just couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the animal, and figured the California win had to be a fluke. It was no fluke. This time, First Hope made 4 lengths in front of the place horse, and we were well on the way to becoming rich. We stayed in Nevada for the last race, living in the stables for fear somebody would take a notion to examine the gimmicked saddle with more than ordinary care. Teddy was in on the secret, of course. He had to be, because anti-gravity makes you feel pretty funny, Dunstan explained. Teddy had to know what was going on underneath him. And he was the most worried of us all. "Something terrible is going to happen," he said. "I can feel it. There's something terrible in the air." Now, living in the stables, there was only one answer to that, and I gave it to him. But he wouldn't be dissuaded. By this time, I was feeling pretty confident, and Dunstan, of course, was on top of the world. "We'll race here tomorrow," he told me, "and then head east for the track openings there. Later we'll take the Derby." I just didn't see any way we could lose. Naturally, I was wrong. We got into the stands just before race time, and they were crowded. First Hope's crazy reputation had gotten around, and guys who normally have been at their local bookmaking parlor had come out to the track to see for themselves. Dunstan found himself next to a big, beefy guy with a red face and blinking eyes who couldn't talk about anything except "that nutty horse out there." We kept our mouths shut, of course. If we'd let on that we owned that nutty horse, we'd have been snowed under with questions and comments. The starting gate swung open. First Hope swung wide and came out in front. Dunstan was following her with a gimmicked binocs, and I had an ordinary pair of my own. Coming around the first turn, First Hope was a length and a half in front of the pack and going away. He hit the far turn 2 lengths ahead of the favourite, a wonderful horse named German's Love, who was running his best that day. But nothing could stop our weightless wonder. "Hey, will you look at that nutty horse go?" the beefy guy yelled. I felt like yelling myself. We'd sunk all the profits into this race. With 2 wins under our belts, we felt pretty safe about it. First Hope came around the far turn, then German's Love, and then the pack. The distance was widening between First Hope and the rest of the field. "Hey, look at that plug!" the beefy guy shouted, and dug Dunstan in the ribs. That did it. Dunstan, off balance, swayed and nearly fell. For 1 full second the gimmicked binocs were off First Hope. Mine were trained right on the animal, but they didn't do any good, of course. They were just normal binocs. Have you ever seen a horse collapse? All of a sudden, about 140 pounds landed on First Hope's back. The anti-gravity machine had no power. First Hope felt all the weight we'd been holding off him. He actually went on his knees. I could see Teddy looking frantic and using his whip, but nothing was going to do any good. I got one clear look at First Hope's face. I've never seen such a surprised and discouraged-looking horse. German's Love passed him almost at once, and so did the rest of the pack. By the time Dunstan managed to get his binocs off the infield and onto First Hope again, it was too late. Run? First Hope could barely breathe. So we lost our money. So that wasn't too bad. But this time the investigation got us. First Hope's sudden collapse had looked even funnier than his previous 2 runaway wins, and the judges took that saddle apart with a fine-tooth comb. They found the circuitry. Dunstan's working for the government now, and wondering how he's ever going to make any money on the lousy salary they pay. Teddy's down in Mexico City being a jockey, since he was outlawed here. Me? I'm a trainer. A good trainer. You ever go out to the amusement park? Take your kids for a ride on the Shetland ponies? Say hello to me next time. Hell, it's a living, isn't it? But if it wasn't for science... The End. About the author. Laurence Mark Janifer, born in 1933, died 2002. Also known as Laurence Mark Harris, was a New York-born editor, pianist, and prolific author across several genres, including science fiction and what passed for erotica back in the day. He published 30 or so novels and a large amount of short stories. Most of his works were published under a wide set of pseudonyms. He also published several novels in collaboration with other authors, such as Randall Garrett. During most of the 1950s, he worked as an editor for the Scott Meredith Literary Agency, the agents of Arthur C. Clarke and Philip K. Dick, among many others, such as P.G. Wodehouse and J.G. Ballard. Other notable authors working for the agency at the time was Milton Lesser, also known as Stephen Marlowe, and S.A. Lobino, also known as Evan Hunter. Funny how authors working there ended up changing their legal names. Coincidence? In 1962, Harris changed his legal name to Janifer after it emerged that Harris was a name assigned to his Polish grandfather by an immigration officer, and that the original name had been Janifer or something similar, pointing to origins in the Polish-Russian town of Janov. I do not know if this town is Janov Podlaski, Janov Lubelski, both in the eastern parts of present-day Poland, or Janov Polewski, renamed Ivanova in present-day Belarus. Later, he worked on the editorial staff of several publications in different genres, such as science fiction and detective, in addition to his own writing. This story was extensively researched, and no evidence has been uncovered to indicate its U.S. copyright was renewed. The text is therefore deemed to be in the public domain. It has been painstakingly transcribed by yours truly, and is destined to be made into a free ebook for the world to enjoy. Do you want to know how you can help save more such stories? Go to storiesoffuturespast.substack.com/about.